About the energy future here in Santa Barbara and really the energy future throughout the state of California. My name is April Price and I work with the Community Environmental Council. And my organization organized this event in partnership with the Santa Barbara chapter of the Sierra Club. So big hand to the Sierra Club as well. And of course, we would also like to recognize the local 350.org and the League of Women Voters for their support in putting this together as well. So folks, what an exciting week for renewable energy in Santa Barbara!
Yeah.
If anyone didn't get the memo, that's okay. Just yesterday, the City of Santa Barbara voted to pursue a goal of achieving 100% renewable energy by 2030. And this is part of a larger campaign. Other mayors across local jurisdictions are pledging to go 100% renewable, and the Sierra Club is pursuing this goal with cities across the nation. So now, after a short 24 hours of celebration, it's time to put our plans into actions, and that's what we're here tonight to discuss. So if you listened yesterday, Matt Ford with the city explained that there are two ways for the city to reach their renewable energy goal. The first is through a 100% renewable portfolio standard, in which the utilities and other energy providers would be mandated to provide 100% renewable energy. And while an aggressive RPS standard is certainly key, tonight we're here to talk about community choice energy, that second option. And community choice energy is a strategy that my organization, the Community Environmental Council, has been championing for close to 15 years. In 2002, the state passed legislation enabling community choice energy, and there was immediate local interest in getting a program started here in Santa Barbara. In our 2007 research document, The Blueprint for an Energy Future, community choice was identified as the most powerful tool to improve our renewable energy options. CEC has since hosted half a dozen forums on community choice, urged local governments to move forward on the platform, and in 2015, our board, thank you very much board, our board at the CEC, agreed and decided to pledge $50,000 towards the Tri-County feasibility study. So this has been a long-standing campaign of ours and something that we're very passionate about. But despite this local enthusiasm for community choice, we weren't quite the first out of the gate in establishing a program, but to look on the bright side, Santa Barbara has had the benefits of lessons learned by established community choice programs. We get to see what worked best in other areas in terms of structure and priorities, and this will be instrumental in establishing our own program. Whether our region moves forward with a tri-county based program, a smaller program, or partners with an existing program, we're going to have the guidance of the statewide community choice movement, and the groundwork has already been laid for a local program's success. So I wanted to make sure that they had a chance to sit down, but I would definitely like to start by recognizing the local elected officials that have joined us for this event. So from the County of Santa Barbara, Doss Williams, I saw you walk in. I also saw Janet Wolf walk in. Thank you, Janet Wolf. And has Joan Hartman made it in yet? Okay, I think she's going to come. And I saw Cathy Murillo walk in from the City of Santa Barbara. There she is. And Stuart Custon from the Goleta. There we go. Thank you very much. And can I welcome any other local elected officials? All right, well, we truly appreciate the folks that made it tonight, and let's get on with the program. So here's the plan. We're going to hear from each of our panelists. Again, these are representatives from established community choice programs or from organizations that are moving forward with community choice advocacy. Each of them are going to give us some of those great lessons learned, and we're going to actually hold all questions until the end of the program, and we're going to pass around some note cards to facilitate that question and answer portion. So we're going to begin with some local insight, a story right here at home, and we're going to start with Jennifer Cregar, the project supervisor from the County of Santa Barbara. Jennifer is leading the community choice energy evaluation for the county, working with local governments and community stakeholders throughout San Luis Obispo, Ventura, and Santa Barbara counties. She has 15 years of experience championing and implementing sustainable energy use and resource conservation practices. Thank you so much, Jennifer Cregar.
Good evening, everybody. How are you? Good. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for everybody for coming out, and a huge, huge thank you to April and Michael and Katie and everybody behind the scenes with the Community Environmental Council and the Sierra Club that helped put this event together. We really, really appreciate you going out of your way and making this such a success, and thank you for all of you for being here. I also need to say thank you to all my counterparts at the 11 jurisdictions across the Tri-County region that have been working really, really diligently trying to get a handle on what community choice energy could mean for the Central Coast region. We've been working at this for a year and a half. I know that all of you are very eager and excited to see the results of our long-awaited feasibility study that'll help give us a better handle on whether or not CCE can be a good fit for our community. I'm gonna go ahead and address that elephant in the room right here, right off the bat. I unfortunately do not have the results of the study to share with you just yet this evening. It is coming, I promise, it's coming soon. It's a very complex undertaking with up to 27 jurisdictions in the mix, 2 different utility service areas, a whole host of different rate structures to consider, constantly evolving and shifting marketplace. So we are doing our very best to scrub the data and really make sure that it's a very sound, technically solid report that our elected officials can make an informed decision on. So we really appreciate your patience, and I won't be able to address detailed questions about it tonight, but I will do my best to give you a sense, starting with the big picture across the state. So what I'm going to do is just a little bit of a primer here. I know most of you are energy experts, but I do want to just start with a little bit of how the electricity market works here in California, because it's really important to understand for CCE. Then I'll talk about kind of the evolution that we're undergoing right now as the marketplace is shifting towards community choice energy, and then give you a little bit of an overview of what we're doing here in the Tri-County region before turning it over to my panelists, who I also need to thank for traveling here to share their expertise and lessons learned with us. Thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to start really basic, right? A lot of the motivation for local governments in California for going CCE is to have more say over where and how their electricity is produced. So I thought I would start with a snapshot of where electricity is currently produced in California. So the image on the left side of the screen there, I know you can't see all those dots, but all of those different colored dots represent different types of power plants. And the things that I want to point out to you is that orange circle here in our Tri-County Central Coast region, you may notice that there's not a whole lot of dots there. We do have some solar, we do have some landfill gas, some biogas, we've got quite a few natural gas plants along the coast, but other than that, there's not a lot here yet. So there could be an opportunity there, and I point out that, as all of you I think are well aware, our largest generator, the Diablo Canyon Power Plant up in San Luis Obispo County, will be shutting down in the relatively near future. So there is some opportunity to bring more local generation to our region. I also would be remiss if I didn't point out that California is not completely an island in terms of its electric grid. We are interconnected to some of the other western states, so we do get some of our electricity from the surrounding states, whether that's renewable energy or fossil fuel-based energy, and we also have the capability to export out some of our excess energy production as well. I know most people tend to think, certainly in this region, of Southern California Edison here in southern Santa Barbara County and Ventura County, and then Pacific Gas and Electric in northern Santa Barbara County and up in San Luis Obispo County as being the only game in town right now in terms of electricity providers. That's not entirely the case. There's actually 4 different types of entities that can provide electricity to customers across California right now. The investor-owned utilities are the largest slice of the pie. That blue piece of the donut up there, almost 2/3 of all the electricity in the state does come from PG&E, Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric, and a couple other IOUs as well. But there are quite a few of the publicly owned utilities or municipal utilities that are actually a department of their local government. Here locally, the city of Lompoc has its own municipal electric utility. That makes up about a quarter of all the electricity sales in the state. And then we also have some private electricity providers that sell electricity directly to typically large commercial customers. So that would be things like some of our universities, some of our national chains, things like that tend to be common companies that would buy electricity directly from a private company. And then fourth, we also have now all of our community choice aggregators that are growing by the month, it seems like. So you'll see all 8 of the operational community choice aggregation programs, or community choice energy programs, up on the screen. We are very fortunate to have some of those represented today. I know that they're going to share a lot of their juicy insights with us, so stay tuned for that. But I think the key takeaway from this is to point out that right now, as of today, about 2/3 of our electricity comes from the large investor-owned utilities, and as we'll see later on, that is rapidly shifting. This is just another, for those of you who are real visual, snapshot of where those different electricity providers are. On the left, again, you'll see the investor-owned utilities. The key thing here, again, in our circled Tri-County region, we have the unique experience of being split between 2 of the IOU service territories. As I pointed out earlier, Santa Barbara County is actually split between PG&E and Southern California Edison. So that's just something to note. That is something that would be unique. If we were to launch a community choice energy program here in our area, we would be in partnership with both of those utilities. We would be interfacing with both of their billing systems. We would be interfacing with both of their customer service teams and things like that. So it's just an added layer for us to think about. And then on the right, you'll see kind of the emergence of different CCE programs across the state. I believe that let me see if I get this right, the dark green are the currently 8 operational programs. I know it's hard to see some of the cities that are operational up there, but I promise Lancaster and Apple Valley are there. The blue are those that have a set launch date. They'll be coming very soon. And then the pink and red and yellow, those are folks just like us that are in various stages of exploring or have committed to undertake CCE, but haven't quite set a launch date just yet. So you'll see it's quite a fair portion of the state. I can guess that the majority of this room has seen this slide by now, if you've been following CCE at all. But for those of you who haven't, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of how CCE works. So what you're looking at right now is status quo. This is our current state here in our region. All the electricity comes from either PG&E or Edison. They either generate it or buy it, and then they deliver it to all of us as their customers. They maintain the power lines, they bill customers, and they handle all the customer service issues that for all of us as either residential or business customers. If we were to choose CCE for our region, only the first pillar would switch. So instead of SCE or PG&E either generating or procuring the electricity that serves our region, the new CCE provider would take over that function, and they would get to determine where your electricity comes from and how it's produced. Everything else would stay with either PG&E or Edison in terms of they would still maintain and build the delivery infrastructure, the billing function would stay with them, some of the customer service function would stay with them as well. So most customers wouldn't notice anything other than a slight change in the line item on their bill. This just kind of breaks out in a little more detail. I won't go through all of this, but this gives you a better snapshot of the responsibilities of the CCE provider versus the IOU. There is some shared responsibilities in terms of things like customer service, energy efficiency or demand response program offerings, as well as potentially offering, a CCE program could offer additional or slightly different incentives for encouraging on-site generation, for example. So this is just kind of a high-level overview of some of the key potential benefits and risks associated with community choice energy. So these are the types of things that we're really drilling into with our feasibility study. They are not necessarily unique to our region. These are kind of the pros and cons that anybody that is considering CCE would be weighing and kind of balancing the trade-offs between. So I don't know how many of you have tried to participate in a rate setting or regulatory process with the Public Utilities Commission, but it is not an easy thing to do. So I point that out because one of the potential benefits of a CCE program is that it brings all of those decisions about where your electricity comes from and how much you're charged for that electricity. It brings it down to the local level, down to your local elected officials who you have much better access to than having to travel up to San Francisco or Sacramento to be involved in that process. So that's one of the potential benefits, is just the local control benefit, the ability for our customers to be more involved in how much their electricity costs, what different types of energy programs, whether that's an energy efficiency program or additional incentives for solar, for example. Those types of programmatic decisions would be made at the local level. It also just provides greater customer choice. So you would have more of a say, again, in how much of your electricity would come from renewable resources, for example. And then there's certainly, I think, a benefit to having your electricity provider be associated with your local government. It could also be a way to pilot more programs, perhaps be a little bit more nimble, things like that. Certainly we're interested in it in terms of supporting some of our community's climate action plan goals, the economic development potential. I know that some of our panelists are going to talk about some of their kind of local job benefits, some of the local program offerings that they have. I do want to point out that one of the benefits that Austin mentioned is kind of improvements to our local grid resiliency here. Those benefits are actually a little bit harder to pin down. Certainly if you're promoting more local generation, you aren't as constraining as much the transmission lines delivering electricity in, but there would certainly need to be some upgrades to our local distribution infrastructure to support any mass build out of local resources. And just very quickly on the risk side, energy procurement is a speculative business. It is inherently risky as a result, and the energy market is rapidly shifting in terms of market dynamics, policies. There's a lot to keep track of and to be able to predict into the future. Of course, I'm sure many of you have heard about kind of exit fees and other fees that get tacked on to CCE customers. That is very much in flux as well. I only have 1 minute, so I'm just going to quickly say, take a look at these slides. This is basically showing the rapid growth of CCE across the state. This slide is showing in terms of the percent of the population that could be served by a CCE provider, nearly half by 2020. And then this is just showing it in terms of electricity sales. So if you remember the very first slide I showed, that right now about 2/3 of all the electricity sold in the state is provided by the investor-owned utilities. Within the next 3 to 5 years, 2/3 of the electricity in the state could be sold by CCE programs. And if you tack on those direct access private providers as well, you're looking at potentially 80% of the total electricity market in the state. So we're at this inflection point. We want to be involved. So here at the local level, as I mentioned, there's a consortium of local governments that have been studying this as an option for about the past 1.5 years. We're getting very close to being able to bring all the data to our local boards and councils for them to make an informed decision about whether it's the right option for us. We are studying the possibility to have all 27 eligible jurisdictions across the 3 counties participate. That is not a guarantee that all 27 will participate. It will be up to each individual city council and board of supervisors to decide whether they want to offer it to their community. And then a subset of those 27 jurisdictions have actually contributed, along with the CEC, money towards the cost of our feasibility study. And we have been meeting twice a month for quite a while now to really get into the details of this. And like I said, help our elected officials make the best decision they can make. So with that, I'll leave you with a few contact options, and I'll be available for Q&A. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jen. And now our speaker that's traveled the furthest distance to get here.
Thank you very much, April, and to the esteemed panelists. This is an amazing crowd. I just want to say that because I've had some events where we've had 1 or 2 people, and you guys are just energizing me right now, so I feel like I'm ready to come play with you folks. So hope you don't hold it against me that I'm coming down from Oakland, California, a NorCal folk, but you know, I've spent some time in LA, so I still have a soft spot for Southern California. But again, just really, really grateful to be here because this is it. This is the launching pad to get communities to meet their climate action goals through community choice energy. There really isn't another more cost-effective, fun, exciting way to provide choice, to catalyze local renewable development projects, and to put the power back in the people to make a decision as to where they want their electricity to come from. You know, this is the start. This kind of opens up the floodgates to tackle the transportation sector, all the air pollution that comes from that sector. So that's what really got me excited about joining MCE about a year ago. So I'm just really excited that this Tri-County region is looking into this, as well as a lot of other really amazing parts of California. So I digress. So MCE was rooted in a pretty simple mission statement, which is to address climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and that's set with our 4 pillars. So that's through catalyzing renewable energy, providing stable and competitive rates, because we certainly wouldn't be able to perform and excel if we were $20, $30, $40, $50 more than PG&E. So our bottom line is to make sure that we are always cost and competitive with PG&E. Additionally, we want to make sure that through this program we can catalyze local workforce and economic development opportunities. We really see that as like kind of the golden goose, for lack of a better term, to get people excited about renewable energy and local renewable energy. And then last but certainly not least is energy efficiency. We want to promote people using less electricity so there's less dependence on the grid. So you have this perfect harmony of developing clean resources but using it at the lowest amount possible. So we have a very similar geographic region in the sense that MCE serves now 24 communities across 4 counties. I do a lot of driving. I have a little Nissan Leaf that taps out at about 60 miles. So when I have to go up to Napa, I have to stop at this fast charger spot and charge up when I'm going up and back. So I feel your pain. But what we're really excited about is the diversity and scope of the communities we serve. It's not just little old Marin and the county and 11 communities. It's Richmond, it's El Cerrito, it's San Pablo, it's Walnut Creek, it's Lafayette. And actually, right now we're in a current inclusion period where we are bringing on what looks to be another between 7 and 10 communities in Contra Costa County. So by the end of June, we should have somewhere around 30 to 33 member communities across 4 counties. But we welcome that. We want that diversity of communities to really kind of showcase what it means to be part of this community choice movement. This is what I love. So when I joined MCE, I was like, I'm going to figure this out for you guys because this is stats and figures motivates action. So since we started, we've been kind of collecting our emissions compared to PG&E. And so collectively over the last 5 years, we've been able to reduce almost 200,000 metric tons of electricity emissions. So it's really been able to catalyze that kind of effort. Yeah. And the nice thing about that is as the grid gets cleaner and you get more electric vehicles on the road, think about all the transportation emissions that will hopefully evaporate and we get that cleaner air that everybody wants in every part of California. I wanted to actually kind of touch upon the climate action movement that's happening in Marin. Right now, the entire county has met their 2020 climate action target of 15% below their 2020 levels, and that was 5 years ahead of their target. But the major catalyst has been MCE in our community choice program, which has been able to reduce both the commercial electricity and residential electricity by about 25 to 26% below baseline. So that's we're really providing them with a springboard to help tackle the transportation sector and also the consumption of natural gas, which is another elephant in the room that a lot of folks are trying to figure out how to tackle. Another really interesting climate impact that I put together for when we were doing outreach to the Contra Costa County communities is like, imagine if you joined us, what kind of climate action impact that would have for your climate action plan immediately by joining MCE. And the one that spoke to us the most was the fact that the city of Pittsburgh, very industrial city on the northern waterfront, if they joined MCE, they would be able to account for 73% of their climate action goals, just with one move at no cost. Just try to wrap your head around that for a second. So it's pretty amazing when you tell somebody you can almost meet your climate action planning goals with no cost up front. So I'll let that speak for itself. Again, just wanted to show you the cost competitiveness of us with PG&E. Again, there are a lot of moving targets with the exit fees and then transmission and distribution charges that fluctuate. We set our rates once a year. Our board gets together and goes through a very rigorous process of trying to procure the most renewable energy at the most cost-effective rate. So again, we're always within about 1%, either plus or minus, of PG&E. Another, again, we want to promote our energy efficiency programs, our customer programs. That focuses mainly on small to medium-sized businesses as well as multifamily units. And we've actually gotten a couple of big grants from the CEC to really focus on low-income family tenant units as well as distributed generation and battery storage. This is another really exciting thing. If folks want to make some money, put some solar on your roof. Again, you have to have a very advantageous net energy metering program, but in 2016, we're actually going to send out checks over $1.35 million to a variety of net energy metering customers. I happen to manage and represent the city of Benicia, and we went and presented them with this big old check of about $114,000 that City Council actually had a hearty disagreement about what they're going to do with it, whether it goes to a sustainability fund or does it go to operations and maintenance. So I would love for all local governments to have that dilemma of figuring out what to do with excess money from sustainability efforts. This is our hallmark local renewable energy project. It's going to be the largest public solar project in all of the Bay Area. 10.5 megawatts. It's going to power about, I think, 3,300 homes. But the great thing about it is that half of the jobs that came from it were union labor. We had some great partnerships with Mill, and all of the bids that went out were all to union contractors. So we were really excited about making sure that folks can get a fair living wage and we can promote union jobs through local renewable energy development. Another really fascinating component of our programming is our FeedIn Tariff program, which catalyzes commercial solar developers to build out up to 1 megawatt of solar, and we pay them well above market rate. I think right now in our phase we're about, I think, $120 a megawatt, but it really helps catalyze and become a revenue generator for these empty rooftops that are just sitting there taking in the sun and not producing anything. And a couple little points was, the newest one that we just set up is going to be generating $550,000 for the developer. I mean, it's pretty amazing to think about just with a little bit of sunlight, you could bring in that kind of revenue. Another kind of cool little component that we've kind of ventured into now is, as we live in the Bay Area, as you folks drive a lot, we are developing a solar and EV system at our headquarters. So we'll have 10 level 2 charging stations, and I think we're going to have, a 40 kilowatt solar system. So again, the charging is going to be free and available to the public, so it'll be an interesting kind of cat and mouse game between MCE employees and public people who want to charge their cars. So it's got to be moving and shaking with the ports, but it'll be fun. It's a good dilemma to have. I know I think this is the last slide, but again, this is what we're committed to. We're not only committed to developing local projects, but throughout the state of California, because we want a really hearty, solid, diverse energy mix that comes from wind, solar, biogas, biomass, as well as small-scale hydro and geothermal. And we really have committed a lot of money to build and also fund local renewable energy projects within the state of California. So we're just excited that more CCAs are getting online to be able to keep pushing this envelope and make sure there's even more projects coming along. So on that note, I will call it an evening. And happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Very exciting for Marin. Next, I'd like to welcome up Cathy DeFalco, the Executive Director for Lancaster Choice Energy. Cathy is responsible for all of the overall Lancaster Choice Energy operations, strategy, and leadership of the team. She brings over 30 years of procurement, commodity, and contract management experience in both the public and private sectors to Lancaster. She's been with the city since 2006, joined LCE as the energy manager in 2015, and in 2017 assumed her role as the executive director. Thank you so much. Come on up, Cathy.
Thank you, April. I first want to echo what J.R. said. It is so great to be somewhere where everyone is so enthusiastic about this. It's just fantastic. So, and thank you to April and my panelists. It's truly a pleasure to be here. So, I have a little bit of a different perspective on community choice, and you know, people say Lancaster, what is Lancaster doing in the community choice world? So I will share a little bit of that story with you, how we got there and what that benefit has been to our community. So like Marin and Sonoma are JPAs, where they take on, as JR was explaining, they have counties and cities, and they have growth within their area. We are actually a standalone CCA, so our CCA is a department of the city. We will not expand beyond the city of Lancaster. We're a community of about 160,000 people. We're a small little town in a desert, and it's a very Republican area, and so people say, how did you get to this CCA with all this renewable energy and all these great programs that you have? So we have a mayor in Lancaster, Mayor Paris, who is very passionate about renewable energy and climate change. And as a result, Lancaster has taken some actions that are kind of unusual for a city of its type. So we've passed ordinances that require solar on all our new construction. We have a JPA, Lancaster Power Authority, which worked with our school districts to put solar on all of the schools within the city of Lancaster. And we got to that point and we kind of said, what's next? What can we do next to meet our net zero goals? And that's where CCA came in. So we started researching CCAs in about 2013. And in 2014, went out and did all the RFPs and RFIs. We saw that this is definitely doable. So in 2015, we started serving load to customers. We've been operational for a little bit over 2 years. As I mentioned earlier, this is exclusive to those who live and work within Lancaster. We have 52,000 customers. That's a mixture of residential, agricultural, commercial, and industrial. Our participation rate is about 94%. That's very high in the CCA world. You know, when you talk to the community, you know, what's not to love about CCA? I mean, there's no reason not to stay with your CCA. Our demographics are also a little bit different. We have 46% of our community is on a care program. That's a low-income based program. We are able to keep that program active through the CCA, so our customers that are eligible through the utility are still eligible through Lancaster Choice Energy. So as a standalone CCA, we have benefits that flow back to the community. Some of those are, we're able to sponsor some of the other programs within the city. We have, we have different programs that we support in the community. We have the higher renewable content, which we heard about Santa Barbara yesterday, which is, you know, a fantastic thing. Our base product is at 35% renewable, and then we also have a 100% renewable option. We also have the NEM program that JR was talking about, where our behind-the-meter solar customers, we have about 3,200 behind-the-meter customers in the city of Lancaster. So those that overproduce get a nice check at the end of the year. This gives residents a choice. That's something that they did not have before. And as was mentioned earlier, this is local control with local benefits. Our city council sets the rates. They do that on an annual basis as part of the budget process. And the benefits flow back to the city. So a little bit more about some of those benefits. We've talked a little bit about some of the EE programs, the energy efficiency programs that are available, and some of the funding that can be applied for when you become a CCA. Lancaster is just starting down that path, looking at different energy efficiency programs. But one program that we've made some progress toward is our EV charging stations and the infrastructure to support EV charging. So we currently are working on 4 separate projects. We're putting that infrastructure at our local hospital, at down at our downtown area. We have it at our carpools. We also have a grant project that we're working on with Tesla where they're supplying van pool vehicles. They're all electric, and we're very close to an Air Force base, and they transport people that live in Lancaster and work at the Air Force base back and forth. So that's something that we are doing through CCA. We're able to get access to those funds from the California Energy Commission because we are a CCA. Another way that we've benefited our community is through LED streetlights. We purchased all of our streetlights from SoCal Edison, and then we found grant funding through Edison, which allowed us to buy LED lights and retrofit all of those lights. And for a small little town, we have a small little solar project. It's a 10 megawatt solar project that's in the city of Lancaster. So we were able to contract for that, again, within the city. It brought local jobs, and again, those were union jobs. It was approximately, I think it was 80 to 85 jobs during the construction of the facility, and it's 3 to 5 full-time jobs as a result. And then, of course, there's all the ancillary jobs that come with it, contracting for various things, engineering, things like that. Another thing that Lancaster is very proud of is the progress that we have made towards transportation electrification. You know, I mentioned our mayor, Mayor Paris. He made several trips to China to meet with a company called BYD. BYD makes electric cars. They don't sell those cars in the United States, but they do manufacture and sell electric buses as well as make the batteries for battery storage. They moved, they built a facility in the city of Lancaster to assemble these buses. So as a result of what Lancaster was doing, that company brought this business to the city of Lancaster. They currently have about 600 employees. They're doing an expansion, and we should have about 1,000 employees at BYD by the end of next year. Our local transit agency, Antelope Valley Transit Authority, it's a JPA, a 3-member JPA. The city of Lancaster is one of the members, and the chair of the board of AVTA is our vice mayor. So he helped push the message that Lancaster has to the transit agency, and as a result, they are going 100% electric. They received 2 buses as a pilot about 1.5 years ago, and earlier, I want to say toward the middle of last year, placed a contract for 85 additional electric buses, and by the end of 2018, they will be 100% electric, the first transit agency in the United States to be 100% electric. We are very excited about that. We help them by pushing them a little, as I said, but also by working with them to give them a special tariff. So we incentivize them to charge during certain times of the day. We provided some nice pricing for them to incentivize them to do this. So I think everyone's seen this slide once or twice, right? And I think Jen did a great job of going through it, but this kind of walks us into the next thing that I was going to talk about. So, LCE now takes the place of the utility in buying, in procuring the energy that people see on their bills. So what does a bill look like? You basically have the same bill. Here's the first line there, and I don't have a pointer. You can see that's Edison, and the second line below it is what LCE's charges look like on that bill. So the customer, when they get their bill, really doesn't see too much of a change. They may question it when it comes to their attention and say, oh, now there's 2 accounts, because they now have 2 account numbers. But the reality is the bill was broken down between transmission and delivery and generation before. It continues to be broken down in that manner. And now instead of Edison having those generation charges, the CCA, in our case Lancaster Choice Energy, those charges are shown that way. And that is it for the story of Lancaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. So we've heard two great success stories from some established community choice programs. And now we're gonna meet some folks that are working and getting their gears going here. So I'm very pleased to welcome Joe Galliani. He's the chair of the South Bay Clean Power Working Group, where he has worked full-time over the last 3 years to launch a community choice program for 14 cities of the South Bay and west side of Los Angeles County. He's also traveled the state doing outreach and education on behalf of community choice all over the state. Joe brought community choice to Los Angeles to the Board of Supervisors in 2014 and successfully lobbied to get funding and support for the 2006 feasibility study. He's now working to launch California's largest community energy program by partnering with South Bay Clean Power and the initiatives in Long Beach and Orange County. Come on up, Joe.
Wow. I just have to say, you know, sometimes those of us that do this work speak to very small rooms of 4 or 5 people. This is a beautiful thing. This is the Woodstock of CCA. And I have to say, just from a personal standpoint, that it is such a pleasure to be in Santa Barbara. I just got back from my vacation, which I spent in Ojai and in San Luis Obispo. So when I want to get away from Los Angeles and come to a beautiful place with beautiful people, this is where I come. So thank you for having me today. So South Bay Clean Power, community choice. So proud to be with these professionals here. I am not the professional on this panel. I am the community person. 3 years ago, we put together a forum in Manhattan Beach, California, on how that city could go 100% renewable if it wanted to in 10 years. And we brought in experts from around the state, from the county, from the state level, and we had a gentleman come down and speak to us from Sonoma Clean Power, the state's second CCA, and they were 2 months away from launching. And he told us this incredible story about this program where they were charging less money for twice as much renewable energy, giving local people the power to make the rules and design the program. And we looked at each other and said, we have to try this here. And so we did. In 2014, we worked with a couple of nonprofits that are very helpful here in this state. There's a group called Lean Energy that helps groups like you and my group. There is the Center for Climate Protection, another nonprofit that provides terrific information. And we basically got the roadmap of how you put together a CCA from a community standpoint. And the first step was getting cities that were interested to participate in a feasibility study. Sound familiar? And we promised those cities that they wouldn't have to pay a dime for that study, because we had watched what happened in Alameda County and in San Mateo County. Both of those counties ponied up, paid for the feasibility study, paid a lot more than Los Angeles paid. And the reason for that is each new feasibility study gets cheaper and easier to do. Why? Because about half of that study is boilerplate. What is a CCA? Where are the other CCAs? How are they doing? So that part is not very hard anymore. And whether or not a CCA is feasible, well, we have proof of concept now with 8 CCAs in this state. Marin proved that CCA was viable here in this state. And there are some folks that tell you you don't even need to do a feasibility study, but we don't agree with that. So we believe that you start with your commitments and your goals and objectives. It's not enough just to say we want to do a feasibility study and we want to have a CCA and we want to get to 100% renewable. We think that you need to make very firm commitments to the road that you want to travel down. So what commitments did we make? First of all, fastest path to 100% renewable. I applaud you. 2030, very, very good. That's 5 years earlier than San Diego, who is, as you know, crowing about that accomplishment. We are setting a very aggressive goal of 10 years from launch. So we intend to launch next year. 2028 will be our target for 100%, and we're going to push our friends in the LA County to match that as well. Another very important thing for us was no use of unbundled renewable energy credits. Those are paper. that get disassociated from the renewable energy project and are able to be sold to others so that they can claim that renewable energy. That was a beautiful thing in the early days of renewable energy when we really needed those credits in order to motivate people to do it. We don't need that anymore. We have so much solar in this state that there are times during the peak production period when we're dumping it and not using it, the imbalance. There are times in this state when solar is so cheap they're paying people to take it. We don't need to fill out our renewable energy portfolios with paper, ladies and gentlemen. Distributed energy resources. This is the core of our program and what we think is the difference. We want to maximize the local potential. We're very lucky in Los Angeles that we have UCLA Luskin Center, who's produced a fantastic study, the laser study, that shows us where solar is most applicable throughout the county in a almost block by block grid. We want to fill that laser study out and put solar every place they say. But when we're talking distributed energy resources, it's not just generation. It's 5 spokes of a wheel. It's generation, it's efficiency, it's storage, it's demand response, and it's electric cars in a big way, and we'll talk about that a little more. Local investment, local power generation, local jobs, local career opportunities, community choice aggregation. We want as much as possible to have it within our boundaries. Is it possible to power everything from within our boundaries? We don't know. It won't be possible getting out of the gate to do so. We'll be buying a cheap power from the desert, and it's never been cheaper. But we have a very aggressive plan to build out our resources throughout our area to the point where it will create billions of dollars worth of local investment and tens of thousands of jobs over a 2-decade period. And it's going to take that long to maximize our potential. Partnership with labor. We watched what happened with our friends in Marin when they launched. The law passed in 2002. Marin didn't launch until 2010. Why? They had intense opposition from their friends at PG&E and our friends from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 1245 up there. And they had some legitimate reasons for being in opposition, but we went to school on those. One of their reasons was they didn't want any renewable energy certificates on bundled use. Why? Because no jobs come with those. Where the jobs are, where the economic investment is in a CCA program is in the build-out. That's where the money is. So we went to our local IBW 11 in Los Angeles, and they were the first group that we went to, and we said, we want you at the table with us to help create this program. You're the experts on efficiency. You're the experts on advanced technology in this field. We want you there helping us, and we want you to partner with us. And I'm happy to say that they have partnered with us, that they have not only done that, but they have funded our consultant and all of our expenses. We've been working with the IBW 11 for about 1.5 years, and let me tell you that in the world of 100% renewable, the electrician is king. And our IBW 11 has an incredible apprenticeship program that we're going to bring to all of our cities. They have a 5-year program that costs the students nothing. They get completely paid for all their books, all their education, even their tools, and after 4 months they start earning a living and they start collecting benefits. And over that 5-year period, their salary goes up year by year by year until they become a journeyman electrician, and they're making $45 an hour. And the requirements are that you're a high school graduate and that you can pass their math test. So, ladies and gentlemen, not everybody needs to go to college. Not every great job is a white-collar job. We need electricians, we need plumbers, we need sheet metal workers. These CCA programs are going to bring those up. Finally, where we live, very important, environmental justice. 2 of our cities have refineries in them, El Segundo and Torrance. I happen to come from Torrance, home of the famous exploding refinery, formerly owned by ExxonMobil. We have workers at those refineries that need a just transition to clean energy jobs. And the way that we're going to do that is to pay attention first to the most impacted communities. There's a tremendous amount of state funding available for those communities. Those are the people that are suffering the worst, because what do? We shove our toxic operations in the lowest income communities of color. That's just the way it is here. And so where we live, I live in an upscale community called the Hollywood Riviera, very reminiscent of where we are here. But 5 miles away, my neighbors are living in low-income communities, fence line on the other side of the refinery. we have a moral obligation to help those brothers and sisters of ours who are not doing as well as we are, and this is a program that enables us to do that, and we're going to make sure that we do that. So we have a mix of very interesting upscale beach communities, west side communities, and urban industrial communities. And we have a tremendous amount of power and 660,000 people in our 14 cities. And we intend to be the model for our friends at LA County. We have 82 cities eligible to be in the community choice program in Los Angeles County. That is a large number. We have some differences of opinion about the best way to govern that. I think a healthy debate is a very good thing. We're proposing a model of what we call the umbrella JPA of CCAs. It's based here in California on the way that municipal utilities band together and form JPAs. In Southern California, we have the Southern California Public Power Authority. They are a JPA made up of municipal utility districts. In Northern California, we have the NCPA, the Northern California Power Authority. They are a JPA made up of multiple munis. What that does for you is it gives you economies of scale for all your members. You can do power procurement, back office services, data management, where they all share in that. But each CCA within that is independent and sovereign, able to make their own rates, able to determine their own renewable portfolio standard, and most importantly, have the local officials in the communities decide what the rules of the game are. Are we going to do enhanced net energy metering and pay people $1 million or more for overproducing solar? Hell yeah. Are we going to give rebates for electric car chargers and infrastructure? Hell yeah, because that's what the community wants. That's what our working group has been talking about for 3 years. That's the community working from the bottom up. These are some of the folks that we have in our coalition. I know I've got a short period of time here, but I won't go into detail, but we have an incredible coalition that combines business, labor, environmentalists, elected officials, and other stakeholders. Our friends, I think I talked about this, where they put this training on for the apprentices with the IBW in LA is a net zero plus energy facility. They're producing more energy than they're using. They're putting it back into the grid, and they have a microgrid that enables them to island, which means when the grid goes down, their grid doesn't go down, their microgrid doesn't go down. And they have emergency resiliency that we want to see Santa Barbara have, that we want to see LA have, that we want to have every city have, so that when the grid goes down from an earthquake or any other reason, that you have the ability to have your emergency services still up and running, that your government is still up and running. You know, our military knows this already. 29 Palms Marine Base is already there with a microgrid. They're able to island. There's no dispute about the climate in our United States military. It's not a political issue for them. It's a factual issue. And nobody is doing more renewable energy and energy efficiency and demand response than the military. And so when you work with your conservative friends, that's a very important thing to point out. One last thing I want to say, and that is, I'm the leader of Los Angeles South Bay 350. And my reason for working on CCA is that it's the single greatest tool we have for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And I want to say that we are at 407 parts per million in CO2 right now. We've just had the 3 hottest years in the history of this planet, and we have some kind of crazy guy in the White House who doesn't want to recognize any of that. This is where, in this room, with this group of people, this is where we take control of this. This is where we reject the federal government's view on this, and where the community and the people rise up and take over our own energy destiny. And I urge you to do that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Getting everyone pumped up. I like that. All right, next up, I'd like to welcome our neighbor to the south from Los Angeles, Gary Gero. He's the Chief Sustainability from the County of Los Angeles. Gary was recently appointed to be the first Chief Sustainability Officer for the County of Los Angeles, where his duties include creating a countywide sustainability plan addressing environmental, economic, and social justice issues. He previously served as the president of the Climate Action Reserve, a nonprofit organization where he currently serves as on its board of directors. Gary's career includes nearly 20 years of work in local nonprofit, primarily in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you so much for joining us today, Gary.
Well, thank you, April, and thank you to Community Environmental Council and to the Sierra Club. I'm a 25-year member of that organization and love the work. It is great. Probably what I'm going to say here has already been said by everybody, so it's hard for me to add something new, but it is great to see such a great crowd out there. Maybe what I'll focus on is a little bit about where we are in the County of Los Angeles, how we got there, and where we're going from here. And really, my job, as April said in the introduction, is the Chief Sustainability Officer. And you know, when you think about what sustainability means, you think about the 3 E's, of course, right? It's the environment, it's the economy, it's equity, and CCE, Community Choice Energy, touches all of those, and it's been really great. I've only been in the job for 6 months at this point, but working on this program is one of the most powerful programs that we could possibly put together to drive sustainability in a county like Los Angeles. So this is really a powerful tool, not just for climate planning, although it's a great tool for climate planning, and we've got to cover the greenhouse gas aspect of it, but also for driving jobs and for addressing equity issues. So where we are, and you can see I'm breaking the mold. I don't have slides. I just thought I'd come out and talk to folks tonight, and I think it's and I think we can have a conversation. And I'm glad I'll be the last speaker, and you guys can actually start asking us some questions. And I'll try to keep it short. So where we are today is that the Board of Supervisors in April approved adoption of the enabling ordinance that says officially to Edison and to the CPUC, we're out, we're going to create our own thing, we're taking 1 million people with us, and have fun. They also approved the JPA document, and the JPA document is the governing document for the county and the cities working together to implement this, so that it's not just the 1 million people in the unincorporated parts of the county where we have authority, but actually working with our city partners. We could be 1.5 million, we could be 2 million people when we come out, which means we could be taking 30% of Southern California Edison's customer base. How we got there, and we're gonna launch this program either later this year or certainly by January. We'll be starting to deliver electricity, and by mid-year next year we'll actually be out to the customers, to all of the customers. And how we got here, a lot of it owes to Joe. Joe's done tremendous work. I want to give him a round of applause. Joe is the Pied Piper of Community Choice Energy. If there's somebody who wants to hear about it, he'll be there telling you, and he tells a good story, and it's exactly how the county came to this. Several years ago, he came to the county and said, would you guys do the feasibility study? We stepped up, we did that. That feasibility study concluded, of course, that we could, in fact, feasibly launch this program and have stable rates over a 20-year period. It was a very detailed financial analysis. Tested all of different risks that could have been involved, combined those risks and said even if all of these confluence of factors occur, you could still actually be competitive against Edison. And when that got to the Board of Supervisors, a very interesting thing happened. This was last year. This was before I'd come to the county. This was June of last year. The feasibility was studied. It was delivered to the Board of Supervisors. And the recommendation there from staff was, let's launch. We can launch by no later than January of 2017, and we're ready to go. This is a good thing. Let's go do this. And you would think the board would have said, yeah, let's go do this. But it actually said, stop. Why are the staff recommending that this only be done at the beginning in the unincorporated areas and then inviting cities to join into the county program? What kind of partnership with the community is that? That does not work for us as supervisors. We see ourselves as part of a region. We're regional leaders. And so the supervisors said, we're creating this new sustainability officer position. Let's give that person the job to go out, work with the 82 cities that are eligible in the county for this program, and create a true partnership with cities. And it reminds me of Jennifer's comments where she said you've got 3 counties and 27 jurisdictions, and how do you put all of that together? How do you drive those diverse interests into a single common element? And really, it's looking at the benefits of the program. We first said what has gone before, and we looked at the Marin model. In fact, the Board of Supervisors motion said, look at the best practices from Marin and Sonoma and Peninsula Clean Power and we looked at Alameda, East Bay, and build on that model. And that's exactly what we do. So that's a JPA model. In that model, interestingly enough, the county, as one member of the board of directors of the authority, has 1 vote, just as any city that comes in, just as the city of Hidden Hills, for instance, with 6,000 people. They get 1 vote, the county with 1 million people get 1 vote. And that's a way of truly building trust with your partners and saying, look, we're going to be all in this together, we're going to make collective decisions. And that actually got cities to the table. We started a bi-weekly negotiation process. We took the JPAs from Marin, from Sonoma, from these others, looked through them, looked at the best practices, held public workshop to get public input on what we should do, and then sat down in the hard nitty-gritty work of trying to put a bunch of cities with diverse interests together. And what we discovered was we did share a lot of common goals. Of course we want to protect the environment. Of course we want to build jobs and have economic development. But what we really want is we want the local control, we want local power, we want stable rates and low rates. And every city comes to that with a slightly different perspective. And I've been now out talking to cities as they're starting to adopt the JPA and join the program. And when you go talk to the city councils, or you go talk to individual council members, or you talk to city managers or people in the community, every community is different. Every community has its own perspective. But they all can be accommodated within a flexible structure that we've created. And so what we've said is that we're creating a program that will have 3 tiers of energy. You've heard about some of the ones that have 2 tiers. We'll have a base tier, like a 33 or 35% tier, a middle tier, and a 100% energy tier. And we've got communities that are impoverished. We've got communities that are exceedingly wealthy. We've got big cities, we've got little cities, we've got residential communities, we've got industrial cities like the City of Industry, it's right in the name. And they all come to this and they say, well, if we can tailor the program to our own needs, if we can actually choose the level of renewables and decide on if rates are our most important thing, and we have communities where rates are the primary thing, they say, look, we want to protect the environment, but we want to make sure that the people and the businesses in our community can afford their energy bills. And if this can give them some rate relief, that's what we're going to prioritize. And others have said, we want to get to 100% maybe on day 1. Up north in Peninsula, the city of Portola Valley launched at 100% on day 1. So that city is now at 100% today. Those are the kinds of flexibility and options you put in this document as you're sitting around the table negotiating. And you say, look, we can all work collectively together. Bigger is better because you have economies of scale. Diversity is important because we want to hear other points of view. We want to know what is important out there. And as you get a broad base of cities, and I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I've seen parts of that county that I'd never thought I'd ever seen before. From the far east in Claremont to the far west to north up in Palmdale and south down in Long Beach in the South Bay. It's a big county and it has a lot of diversity. So what you can do, what you can achieve, because the administrative costs on this are going to be fairly small, and the bigger the rate base is, the more you can spread those administrative costs. So we're looking at one big program where we can tailor it individually for each city. And I think cities are understanding that and are coming in. We're going to be, as I said, we're going to launch later this year, no later than January of 2018, and we'll be delivering electricity, good, clean, and local electricity. We share the values and goals of all of the speakers that have gone before. This is a way of really empowering the community, and I'm glad to see so many people out here. You guys go do it.
All right, thank you so much, Gary. So I'm sure that many questions have popped into your head through these great 5 speakers. We have some note cards that we can pass around, and Michael and Cathy are walking around in the back handing out note cards. If you would like one, just put up your hand. We have pens as well. Please send in your questions and keep that process going. I'll start off with a question that I have. Gary, you made it sound really, really easy to, well, many of you made this process sound really easy to work across such diverse groups, such diverse communities, and to make sure that all of these voices were heard in the planning process. And J.R. bringing on new cities in Marin Clean Energy, and even Jen in the working group that's established here in the Tri-County region. Can you speak to the challenges that are also inherent in this process and how you've addressed those challenges, and give us a little bit of the other side of the story as well? Not everything is rosy, and I think there's a little bit of a concern in working across such a large Tri-County region that there will be a bit of a bureaucratic, I won't say the word nightmare, but we've heard a lot of rosy stories today, and I'd just like to hear some challenges that might be inherent in this as well.
I guess I can start, because we certainly, maybe those are fresh for me. We just finished the negotiations just a couple months ago. But the real challenge was, how do you design a system that allows for individual interest to be reflected? And as we're writing our JPA, of course, the first thing in any JPA document are the statements of purpose, essentially, the aspirational goals. And oddly enough, that became perhaps one of the longest and most contentious discussions. It wasn't some of the legal aspects of the JPA, the governance and the voting, of course, was an issue, but it was, how do we decide collectively what our aspirational goals are, and how aspirational should those goals be? Because some people may not agree with all of those goals. And so it really became sitting down together, building trust, understanding that those are aspirational. What we're actually creating with the JPA document is governance. We're setting up a governing structure for this entity. And once you buy into the governance, and I said in the remarks, we've essentially said it's a one-member, one-vote approach. People are willing to sit at the table and say, look, if I can have that kind of power in that governance, then we together, and you've built trust over the course of several months of sitting down every 2 weeks and negotiating, then I am willing to actually sign on to something that says we have these aspirational goals, whatever, if it's 100% renewable in 10 years or whatever it happens to be, because I know when we sit down together to actually start writing policy, we have no policy in our JPA. Our JPA is a governing document. We do have a business plan that tells us how the financials will work and make sure that the financials will work. But when they sit down together starting next month and start actually writing the policies of the organization, they have been around the table together. They have worked through some contentious issues. They've built trust, and they feel like they're empowered. And all of those things lead to being willing to actually engage. That doesn't mean everybody engaged. We had, I think, 50 of the maybe eligible cities. I think 58 expressed interest. We had maybe 50 of them kind of somewhat actively involved, maybe 30 really actively involved. That's a start. We're not going to get all 82 up front. Maybe we don't want all 82 anyway. Some of them may not want to ever do this. They say, Edison is fine with me and I'm not going to do it. You don't have to have everybody. I think you have to have a coalition of the interested and the willing.
And I would just tack on to that here at the local tri-county level, I mean, certainly we share a lot of commonalities with our counties to the north and south of us, and that we we do all share kind of a somewhat divergent rural versus more urban population centers. I think that's common across the 3 counties. We also do have a mix of kind of political and social perspectives on things. So certainly we are trying to balance each individual community's kind of policy and social goals that are most important to them, and make sure that in the study that we're doing, we're able to speak to all of those kind of policy concerns of the elected officials that will be making this decision. So I think that is certainly something to be aware of and that we are mindful of, and that's why we have been working at this for as long as we have, and why, you know, the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors directed staff from the beginning to go out and try to build this as a partnership from the beginning. So I think that has been something important to our region. You know, I will point out that there are certainly economies of scale to having more players in the mix. But I think, as April was alluding to, that also can go too far the other direction, where the decision-making process gets a little bit convoluted and can be potentially cumbersome. So I think that, again, like any policy decision, there are trade-offs, and not everybody is going to be fully satisfied all the time. So I guess I would encourage those of you in the room to kind of make clear what your kind of individual and policy priorities are to your elected officials, so that they know and they can choose accordingly.
Let me pick up on that a little. One of the biggest challenges is how complex an issue this is. There's very little institutional knowledge at the city council level about how a power company works. I had no background in this 3 years ago. Some of us that work on this have had to basically go to school on it. But it is quite a challenge to sit down. I mean, I've made it my policy to meet with every individual council member in every city that we have our initiative in, every city manager, every public works director. It is a very heavy lift to explain this program and then get into the details of it, because we do tend to get to be cheerleaders for this, because part of our job is getting people interested and connected to this. But this is not without very serious risk. This is not an easy program to institute. There are things coming that are out of our control that we don't know the answers to, like right now these exit fees that we're not going to go into a lot of detail on, but the 3 investor-owned utilities have proposed a change on how these fees will be assessed, and most of us think that that means we're going to be paying more for those fees. So one of the dangers is that you get very excited about beating the utilities rates, and you set expectations that you can't manage. And that's something we've learned in this program. In the beginning, we were like, oh yeah, everybody's got lower rates and you can just factor that in. But you know, something as simple as the fact that a community choice program set their rates once annually, and the IOUs, the investor-owned utilities, change their rates multiple times during the year. That means you can get caught with your pants down and have the utility change things, and all of a sudden your rates are a penny more. And if you have set the expectation that you will always be cheaper than the utility, you're going to disappoint a lot of people. So some of us have now changed our song, and we talk about it being competitive with the utility and offering so much more in value added.
I just want to add one more thing on top of that. I know I mentioned it earlier, but I do want to stress that the #1 thing that is unique about our region right now is that we would be involved in launching a potential CCE program working with 2 very different utilities, with 2 very different rate structures and billing systems. That cannot be underestimated how complicated all of that is. I can tell you that JR, I'm sure, is an expert on how PG&E works now, and the other 3 folks are very likely experts on how Edison works. We would have to be experts on both. And we're getting darn close with our advisory working group, but it's going to be challenging all along the way, and that's one of the things that we're looking at in our feasibility study that we're taking a closer look at, is the differing rate structures and how potentially our rates could compare against those differing rate structures.
I just wanted to challenges. Well, I don't think we went through any challenges up in Marin at all. It was just smooth sailing. Just, you know, the legislation was written in 2002, and here we are, started in 2010. So it's just we were getting lazy up there. Honestly, you know, I think there's some legacy challenges with our marketability up there, just having, you know, Marin in the name. You know, we've rebranded ourselves as MCE, so that's how we present ourselves. But I thought the most interesting community that joined us, the first one outside of Marin, was Richmond. This is a refinery city, an industrial city, a beautifully diverse and dynamic city, and they were the first folks to join us. It wasn't like Alamo or Walnut Creek or Lafayette, some of these affluent communities in Contra Costa County did. You had just a beautiful, diverse city say yes to this. So I think that kind of led a little bit to more of the credibility of us being able to expand outside of kind of the beautifulness of Marin in that sense. I also think there's something that I've always been puzzled about, is the bill. That is the biggest hurdle to this, is the bill comes from PG&E. People, they see a line item that says MCE, electric generation, like, oh, is this an additional charge? But I don't know what's going on. Who's double charging me? I always felt like if the legislation was written and the bills came from MCE or every single one of the CCAs, you probably have a lot better dialogue as far as people understanding what is going on. I think I take pride in the fact that we have the highest opt-out rates. We still have some cities that are 30% opted out. So 7 out of 10 residents or businesses joined MC. The other 3 said no, thank you. So I think the opt-outs coupled with the legacy, coupled with the billing, have been some serious challenges for us. But I think we've met those challenges. I mean, I've seen these, at least in some other CCAs that are coming online with these advisory committees. Those are beautiful. I think in retrospect, I think probably we could have had one when we started. But I think the way we trying to get off the ground, get this program going, get the blueprint going, we wanted to be the launching pad for folks to make even better programs or more aggressive programs. So we encourage, embrace, and just love the fact that other CCAs are taking on community advocates, the business community, everyone to help develop the JPA and to help form the CCA as a whole unit. So we really commend those folks for doing that. The only thing that we ended up kind of developing in concert in the last couple of years is the Community Power Coalition, which is all about getting diverse stakeholders from environmental justice, from the business community, to get together every month to talk about what are the needs. And a lot of that is accelerating Deep Green Outreach, which is our 100% renewable energy product. So I think a lot of that we had to kind of take baby steps and walk and learn. But I think we love our challenges. I mean, we love the fact that, you know, an opt-out is a choice. You know, so we feel like as much as we're in for opting up, we're in the business of opting out too, because at least people are then familiar and they can make a decision. And that's ultimately what community choice is all about, is the power to make a choice to whatever's best for your home or business.
Great, thank you. A good number of these questions have addressed the local issues regarding the grid reliability. And so woven into these concerns are questions regarding the ability of these community choice programs to procure storage. And so I was wondering if you could speak to the ability to procure storage, if you have any experience doing so, and how that works with the reliability of renewable resources as more renewable resources become the mainstay of our energy sources. How is this balance going to occur as the entire state becomes more and more based on community choice energy, more renewable? How will community choice programs be the leader in making sure that there is a reliable source of electricity through energy storage or other factors?
Well, I think one thing that Lancaster is doing, as I mentioned earlier, we have one 10 megawatt storage project that is just for our customers' consumption. But in the area, we have hundreds of megawatts of solar projects out there. Battery storage right now is pretty expensive, and I think the fact that there is so much solar growth going on in the state right now is going to push it's going to push the state to push others to get storage. So we're working on a project right now where we're looking at getting a storage system that will complement our 10 megawatt project. And we're working with the CEC to get funding on that. We're putting together, one of the staff members is putting together all the information on that, and we are one of 2 finalists to get that. So we're kind of hoping that market conditions as they are right now will help push those new technologies forward and make them more affordable. So.
And the good news there is that battery storage dropped by about 50% last year. It still is expensive, but I think probably everybody on this panel read in the last week the new low mark set by a utility in Arizona, combined solar and storage at a lower price than natural gas. And part of that is the investment tax credit, because the developers of a combined renewable energy and storage project get that 30% tax credit on the storage and the generation. Here in California, I'll just add too, especially if you're an individual solar owner, we have a fantastic statewide program called the Self-Generation Incentive Program. The state of California wants you to have storage if you have solar on your roof. In fact, the state of California is going to pay for my Tesla Powerwall, and they're going to give me a rebate that is more than the cost of the Powerwall that will cover most of the installation. It won't be around for long. A lot of us are filing the very arcane paperwork to get that, but businesses are doing likewise and at a larger level. So the CPUC and the California Energy Commission are on top of this and pushing us to go there, and we will go there. And last but not least, battery storage is not the only way we store energy. We have pump storage. There's some fascinating new technologies. There's ice storage now. Check it out. There's some incredible railroad storage.
Another thing that we're doing, another project that we're working on is working with our behind-the-meter residential customers that have storage on their roof and providing them with a residential-sized battery storage that the city owns and put it in their facility, and then we could use, but we retain the ownership, and then we can deploy that back to the grid when it's appropriate, when it makes sense to do so, to help with things like grid stability. That's very early. That's in the idea stage, but we're actually working with a battery manufacturer on that project. So.
Great. A number of the questions are addressing the ability of a local community choice program to lead to local local growth of renewable energy projects. And I know that you touched on some success stories. You know, we're in a place where land value is high, and how much can you build within a given area, and what tools can you use to facilitate local energy growth as more and more community choice programs and as more and more utility scale renewable growth occurs and this land becomes, you know, even more and more sought after? What are the tools that community choice programs will use to make sure that they actually are continuing to deliver local renewable projects?
I can jump in on that because folks probably will know land value in Marin is quite up there, and I think that was one of the major challenges in a lot of the community advocates around the Bay Area gave us a hard time for not developing more local renewable energy projects faster. A lot of that had to do with the expensive land value. But I think what we're looking at is a kind of a next generation feed-in tariff where it's up to 1 megawatt, but we're actually exploring between like 1 and 5, and then maybe over 20 megawatts. So we really want to kind of tell the solar, the renewable energy development community that if you build it, we'll buy it, and we'll buy it at really good levels. I mean, any 20 megawatt system we're not going to be able to pay for as lucratively as a 1 megawatt system. But we feel like we want to provide a portfolio of options for the developers that are out there. We also feel like the net energy metering, we're going to continually provide a robust and attractive NEM program. It's kind of astonishing. As we are expanding into Contra Costa County, just the one community of Antioch, again, another very industrial community, they have enough solar potential in their community to power their community twice over. it's kind of amazing the potential. So what we're looking at is, while we can't unlock the potential in Marin, we're looking at how to unlock the potential in Contra Costa County, which has, just as rich and wonderful environment, but the land costs are a little less. And working with the county on how to streamline permitting and really unlock that potential, because you really need to go where the land is good and it's inexpensive, but also has good connectivity to the grid. That's another thing. You got to make sure the transformers are up to date, and to make sure that you actually can kind of basically unlock and unload all that great power. And then on a second note, storage, there's a lot of different options, but this is that one component that's going to help us with the duck curve, with all the curtailment that's going on right now. I feel like, batteries and electric vehicles are a solution, battery storage. It's interesting, in our service area, there are a lot of larger customers like wineries who are doing storage because they want to deal with demand charges. I don't know if that kind of goes over everybody's head right now, but demand charges, the utility charges you for the amount of electricity you need at a given point in time, and if you start pulling a lot during the day, you just get whacked with these like unruly charges. So they actually felt it was more cost effective to install storage than it was to pay those charges. So it's more of an economic imperative instead of a resilience imperative, but then they realize all the ancillary benefits of a fully integrated system. So yeah, those are kind of just our thoughts. There's so much potential out there, and I just hope we can figure out ways to unlock it faster.
J.R., can you help all of us explain or understand a little bit better the difference between a feed-in tariff and net energy metering, and how your incentives might differ from PG&E's?
Sure. So a net energy metering is for rooftop solar customers, small-scale commercial or residential customers. So it works pretty much where your panels produce, and then anytime your panels aren't producing, you have to pull from the grid. It becomes a balancing act between how much you consume versus how much you produce. So it's an accounting system. I'll try to explain this as quickly as possible, but the difference between our net energy metering program and PG&E's is that you accrue credits every month, like the account balances. You can roll over those credits, whereas with PG&E's, you actually end up, you just pay a monthly surcharge, and at the end of the year during your true-up time, you either get a big bill for all the excess generation or the excess production that you had to pull, or they give you a number that says, oh, this would have been your cash out, but then they slash it and give it to you at a wholesale value of about 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So the prime example would be the city of Benicia. If they were with PG&E, they probably would have only gotten maybe $30,000 from their solar production, whereas we gave them $113,000. So there's a huge economic disparity between the two programs. The feed-in tariff program is specifically for solar developers who want to unlock roof space or land or anything, and then we buy the power through a power purchase agreement at above market rate. I don't know what PG&E's, I don't want to quote it right now, but we are heads and toes above the rest in terms of the solar PPA right now for the feed-in tariff. So folks can really turn that into an income stream as well. But we also just signed 2 feed-in tariff PPAs with a landfill gas plant, the Novato landfill, but then also a wastewater treatment plant in central Marin. So I think both of those are producing about 4.2 megawatts of biogas, which I think is the holy grail in terms of replacing natural gas produced electricity. So I think that's kind of my own personal 2 cents about, replacing fossil fuel natural gas with biogas.
I would just like to add one other change between the NEM program, between the utility and the CCA. We had the option, well, let me back up a little bit. We helped, our Lancaster Power Authority helped put solar on all of our school districts' parking lots in order to help them reduce their electricity bills. Well, what happened is one of the schools closed, so they had absolutely no consumption, but they had all this production. So SCE said, oh well, too bad, but the other facilities were not overproducing, so they still had to pay their bill every month. Well, once they became a CCA customer, we allowed them to aggregate all of their facilities because they were all under one account owner. And so that allowed the production at that one school to offset the consumption at other sites. And that's something the utility won't do, but the CCA has the ability to do. And it saved our school district, I believe it was about $40,000 a year. So.
And one last thing, another thing the utilities can't do, but the community choice programs can do, is make changes based on zoning and permitting and land use. Your cities control these things, and so if you wanted to offer incentives of any sort, or tax breaks, or special zones, cities can do that, and that's something that the utilities can't compete with.
Great points on the flexibility of the community choice program. A couple of the questions that have come in are focused on the transportation, how community choice programs can really help to green our transportation. And there were a few examples of electric chargers increasing, but maybe you can speak a bit more to the future of that. Are we looking to use any other programs down the line? Are we looking to use batteries in cars as battery storage or other ways to balance the load? And another transportation-focused question, has the city of Lancaster created an opportunity for the Chinese bus company to continue its bus construction with contracts to other cities, economically benefiting Lancaster as well as other cities nationwide and beyond? So just go ahead and speak to all transportation.
I'll answer that second part first. Yes, absolutely. They've contracted with other, I believe, universities. There's another city in Southern California that they're working with Metro in the LA area. There's a lot of different contracts going on, and yes, those do bring monies into the city via tax revenue. So that's wonderful. And again, you know, it's very important to our city council to have the job creation, and so that's another big thing, is the job creation. So yes, they are expanding, and I'm actually hoping they bring the car piece of it over, and we're working with them to get into the battery storage. They're very good at building batteries, not quite as good at marketing them, and we're looking to help them with that because they build a great battery. As far as the battery being a storage, the battery in the bus working as a battery storage system that would help the grid, we're still kind of looking at that. It does absolutely have the capability to do that. We're just, you know, we're still kind of working around how the mechanics of that and the logistics of that might work. So, but definitely the opportunity is there and the ability is there.
And Marin has done some really innovative things that the rest of us are studying and looking to copy. You've got you want to talk a little bit about where you're doing?
Sure. We had a pilot project called Smart Charge, which was a collaboration with a level 2 charging company, where we had some residences and our EV owners sign up for this pilot program, where they would get juice points or points that they could trade in for cash if they participated in demand response events. So the whole point of it is that most of the demand response events happen sometime during the day, and so the hope was that people have their car charged to a smart charge charging station, and if there's a demand response event, they could say, yeah, shut me down for sources. But it's, you know, a lot more expensive during the day because there's a lot more demand there for it. But I think it's an interesting psychological or behavior change experiment that's going to be unloading in California, where it allows people to have a better relationship with their electricity. And it also kind of gets me thinking about a better relationship with water. You know, people feel like, even though, you know, California is constantly in a drought, but the relationship with water is kind of like, oh, it's just a use, I throw it out. It's kind of the same thing with electricity. So I think as much as rate structure, there's opportunities to kind of really look at behavior change and really the psychological components of what people do every day and how we can influence that, but also empowering people to make good decisions. Like, this shouldn't be like a hard, arduous process. This should be fun. I mean, I don't know. I have some games with my friends and be like, well, how much was your peak this month? And they're like, well, it was this. I was like, well, I got you on that one, huh? What about your off peak? But I feel like it can be a lot more fun, you know, and I feel like that's where we can engage youth and other kind of community advocates to engage about this and make this a fun, to make sustainability fun, to make climate fun, to make it as much as it is about saving the planet, but like just living a better, healthier, more fun life.
There are also tools that use technology. I was in a meeting, actually it was earlier this week, with somebody in the energy field, and he showed me an app on his phone, and he pulled up right there what the usage was at his home right then, and it had little circles that said his dryer was running, you know, this was running, that was running, and he could control it and he could see it, and you know, that becomes fun. That becomes, now I want to use less during these time periods, and you can see, you can break down you know, what exactly is using how much power by the signature of the power consumption, and then control it, which is a pretty cool thing, I thought. It was a pretty cool app. So.
Nice. Well, speaking of fun, some of the questions are addressing the political buy-in that needs to occur. And so I'll read two questions that are sort of on the same vein and then let you dive in here. One person in the audience says, what was the defining moment that had your local leaders say yes? What did it? And then on the other side of the coin, seemingly politics has not damaged the community choice process. Was this consciously planned, and how was that accomplished?
Okay.
Have fun, guys.
Yes, it was all part of our master plan.
I think for us, our mayor said, this is something we need to do to reach our net zero goals. So go out there and find me a way to make it happen. And so he put specific staff members on it. They went out and did research, and as a result of the feasibility study, it was, you know, it was very feasible. So, you know, I think our politician, our primary politician, was behind it from the get-go, which I think was very helpful. I think it made it easy for us to just move forward. And I forgot the second part of the question.
The conspiracy one. I'll say from our standpoint, at the Board of Supervisors level, there was broad support. Actually, the motion that brought the feasibility to us was from a Republican supervisor on the Board of Supervisors, paired with one of the most progressive, Sheila Kuehl, that you may know. They worked together because they saw that this could work for multiple purposes. But as I'm out talking to cities, this is where actually having an understanding of what the priorities and needs and interests of each individual city is helps drive the conversation. Because in some cities, you can lead with greenhouse gases, and there'll be council members that say, yeah, that's what we want to do. We've got a climate plan. We need to go do that. Other cities will say, we really need jobs in our community. What can this program do for jobs? And then you can lead with the economic development aspects, and you can say, well, where do you have parking lots? Where do you have city facilities? Do you have warehouses? Do you have self-storage units in the community where we can build some solar? And then in other cases, it's the rates, and I talked about the rates as well. There are those that just say, my people are suffering, can you get me lower cost than what is currently being delivered? And so the conversation around politics really is driven by the local needs and the local interests of the individual council members and of the city and the city's personality itself. And that's part of the beauty of the CCE program, is that it can serve multiple functions. It can meet multiple needs. And so you can emphasize one of those over another depending on where you are. And I think that actually helps foster those conversations.
When we started this, we developed 2 flyers, one for Republicans and one for Democrats. and it's important to know who is on your council and which way they're leaning, because local electeds don't always follow the national party. But to simplify it, in our Republican flyer, we talked about local control, we talked about costs, we talked about economic investment, and we added the greenhouse gas cutting as, oh yeah, there are environmental benefits too. When we talk to Democrats, we lead with the environmental benefits and the union stuff. And we find, and as Gary says, this program has something to love for everyone. And when I get to the most conservative cities, I always talk about the example of what the military is doing.
Wow, politics. I think what worked from us was having, you know, the Board of Supervisors led by Supervisor McGlashan, as well as strong community advocates to really push this forward. That seemed to be kind of the recipe for success, despite all the $45 million worth of campaigning against us by PG&E. But I think as we move into new communities, it's a lot of it is exactly what all the other folks have mentioned, is that it's really just understanding each community and each council's needs and being able to read that. I think that's probably one of the most interesting experiences that I've had, is I'll go up to a council that we're trying to get to join, and I'll have like 3 bullet points, and then in the midst of the council meeting, these folks will address 3 other needs that I wasn't prepared for. So all of a sudden, I need to act on the fly and figure out a way how to coalesce what their needs are with the program. And I think that's a beautiful, that's the beauty of this type of program, is it does fit all the boxes. Every narrative can be explored with every single constituent who has a different need, whether it's justice, whether it's jobs, whether it's union, whether it's environmental, whether it's just cost competitiveness. And I think the one thing that a lot of folks always kind of sink their teeth into is the fact that it's choice. You get a choice now. I mean, I think it's absolutely fascinating that all of a sudden PG&E now has 3 electricity options. They have 33%, 50%, 100%, and that just happened in the last year or 2. So in our service area, you technically have 6 options of your electricity. That happened in 7 years. So I think I think the most important thing is identifying the politics and working with it and crafting the narrative that makes sense, so that those folks feel like you're committing to them for the needs that they have. And then a lot of the times I find most interesting was, and I won't name names because our board members would kill me, the three communities that held out the longest to join MCE. They just said, no, we're not going to be a part of this. They were actually the 3 communities that unanimously vote to go 100% renewable energy for all municipal accounts within the course of 3 weeks. These councils just went one after another and said, let's do this. So it's kind of interesting how you can have folks who are very against it, but then all of a sudden can be huge advocates. So I think something to always remember is, even if you have someone who's fiercely opposed to it, they could end up becoming your greatest ally.
Well said, thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's getting to be that time where I hear rumbling bellies in the audience. And these folks have graciously volunteered to stick around and chat with people who want to come up and ask some more personal, not too personal, but some one-on-one. Obviously, I haven't eaten dinner either. Ask some more follow-up questions. So please join me in giving a great big hand to our panelists. I do encourage you to keep your ears out for those times when folks like the Community Environmental Council, the Sierra Club, continue to call on you for your support in front of our local decision makers in terms of requesting additional renewable energy in our neighboring jurisdictions, as well as in front of the County Board of Supervisors when our feasibility study does become public. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Have a great evening.